It began with a letter, as so many forgotten histories do. The year was 1837. In a small, damp room in the shadow of a rising giant of stone and glass, a man named Elias Vance was dying. He was not a man of letters, not a scholar or a statesman whose words would be preserved in archives. He was a master mason, one of the countless, nameless hands that the official histories tell us spent their entire lives, generation after generation, toiling to raise the great cathedrals of the world. His hands were calloused, his back bent, his lungs filled with the dust of 1,000 blocks of granite and limestone. But Elias was different. He held a secret so heavy it had crushed his body and was now threatening to extinguish his soul. So he wrote. In the flickering candlelight, with a hand shaking not from age but from a deep, resonant fear, he wrote to his only son, Thomas. It was not a will. It was a confession. He wrote of the structure they were completing, a cathedral that would one day be celebrated as a triumph of human endeavor, a testament to decades of faith and grueling labor. The official records, the ones you can read today, state that its construction began in 1821 and would not be completed until 1855, a span of 34 years, a lifetime of work. They are lying. Elias Vance, in his final testament, wrote the truth. Thomas, the letter began, the ink spidery and desperate. They will tell you we gave our lives to this place. They will carve our sacrifice into the story of its stones. But the stone tells another story. Do not believe them. We did not build this church. We merely assembled it. He went on to describe a process that has no place in any history book, any engineering manual, any architectural treatise. He wrote that the great blocks of stone, some weighing over 50 tons, arrived at the site already quarried, already cut with impossible precision. He described how a small, elite team of men, whom he called the singers, would arrive before dawn. These were not masons. They carried no tools of the trade. Instead, they carried great, tuning fork-like rods of a strange, dark metal that did not reflect the light. Elias wrote of the sound, a low, pervasive hum that seemed to emanate from the very ground, a sound that vibrated in the bones and made the teeth ache. The singers would arrange their rods around a block of stone, and as the hum intensified, the stone would lose its weight. It would become pliable, not to the chisel, but to the sound itself. He watched, hidden in the shadows one morning, as a 60-ton granite lintel was lifted into place by 6 men, guided by the pitch and timbre of their humming rods, rising through the air as if it were a child's kite. The entire structure, he confessed, from foundation to the final spire, was erected in 18 months. 18 months. He wrote of the mortar, a substance mixed by these same strange men, which did not dry but set in an instant with a flash of cold light, bonding the stones with a strength that was greater than the stone itself. He described vast, intricate rose windows, the glass already leaded, arriving in single, colossal crates, their complexity baffling even the most skilled artisans. Who made them? Where did they come from? The singers never spoke. The foreman, a man under their direct employ, warned the masons against asking questions. Their job was to put the final dressing on the stones, to create the illusion of toil, to carve the marks of the chisel where no chisel had ever been needed, to perform the theater of construction. The letter ended with a chilling plea. They built everything, Thomas. We built nothing. We are just the story they are paying for. I have taken their coin, and it has poisoned me. The sound has gotten into my bones, and it is shaking me apart. Do not seek this trade. Do not seek their truth. It is a truth that unmakes the world. Burn this letter. Forget me. His son did not burn the letter. It was passed down, a dark and confusing heirloom, through 4 generations. In 1958, his great-great-grandson, a history professor named Samuel Vance, tried to have the letter authenticated. He brought it to the university archives, then to the city's historical society, the very institution responsible for maintaining the official narrative of the cathedral's construction. The response was swift and silent. The letter was declared a forgery, a clever but ultimately amateurish fabrication. Samuel Vance's reputation was tarnished. He was quietly denied tenure the following year. The letter itself was taken for further study by the Historical Society. It was never seen again. They buried it. They buried the truth of Elias Vance with the same quiet efficiency with which their predecessors had erected the cathedral he described. They sealed it away in a lead-lined box of academic condescension and institutional denial. But here is what they did not know. Samuel Vance, fearing precisely this outcome, had made a high-quality photographic copy of every single page. And this is where our story truly begins. This is the story they tried to erase. The story of how every great cathedral, every megalithic masterpiece of the ancient world, was not the product of centuries of primitive labor, but of a lost science and a forgotten technology so advanced it borders on the magical. The official narrative of our past is a lie. It is a carefully constructed facade, a theater of toil designed to conceal the single greatest truth of human history. We are a species with amnesia. We live among the ruins of a brilliant, global civilization, and we have been taught to call them the works of our own ignorant hands. The letter of Elias Vance is not an anomaly. It is a Rosetta Stone for deciphering the true history of our world. It is the key that unlocks a pattern of deception that stretches back for centuries, a conspiracy of silence maintained by the very institutions we trust to preserve our past. They tell us the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris took 182 years to build. They tell us the Cologne Cathedral took 632 years. They point to these immense timelines as proof of our ancestors' devotion, their unwavering faith, their willingness to dedicate generations to a single project. It is a romantic, inspiring story. And every single word of it is false. What if these timelines are not records of construction, but records of concealment? What if the centuries-long gaps in building were not due to wars or a lack of funding, but were periods of dormancy for a technology that was being systematically dismantled and hidden from the world? What if the official start date of a cathedral's construction is not the day the first stone was laid, but the day the cover-up began? Consider the evidence. It has been hiding in plain sight all along. We have simply been taught not to see it. We have been conditioned to accept the impossible as fact. Look at the old newspaper archives from the 19th century, before the narrative was fully solidified, before the ministries of history had ironed out all the inconvenient wrinkles in the timeline. The accounts are there, if you know how to look. An 1842 edition of the Boston Daily Mail contains a small, overlooked article about a new cathedral being erected in a neighboring state. The correspondent expresses astonishment, writing, "The structure, which is of a most magnificent and complex design, seems to have risen from the very earth in a single season. Where last spring there was but a field of mud and scaffolding, there now stands a testament in stone that rivals the great works of Europe. The speed of its construction is, to put it mildly, miraculous." Miraculous, a word you will find again and again. In France, the personal diary of Adeline Dubois, the wife of a stonemason working on the restoration of the Chartres Cathedral in the 1830s, tells a similar story. She writes not of her husband's exhaustion from hard labor, but of his confusion. Henri returns home each evening perplexed. She wrote in an entry from 1836. He says the work is not work at all. Great sections of the wall, which were crumbled, are made whole overnight. He and his men are tasked with chipping at the new stones, to make them appear old, to match the weathering of the rest. He says they are aging the building, not repairing it. He fears God will see this deception and punish the town. This was not restoration. It was fabrication, a deliberate act of theatrical aging, designed to make a newly manifested or repaired structure fit an ancient timeline. This pattern of deceit required more than just compliant workers. It required academic enforcement. It required a Praetorian guard of historians and archaeologists to ridicule and destroy anyone who dared to question the official story. Enter Professor Alastair Finch. In 1922, Finch was a celebrated architectural historian at a prestigious university, renowned for his work on Gothic structures. But Finch was a man of integrity, and the numbers simply did not add up. He studied the logistics, the quarrying of the stone, often from sources hundreds of miles away, the transportation over medieval roads, the sheer manpower required to lift and place multi-ton blocks with the precision of a watchmaker, hundreds of feet in the air. He calculated the food, the water, the housing, the tools, and he came to a stark conclusion. It was impossible, not just difficult, not just a testament to human ingenuity. Mathematically, logistically, physically impossible. In 1924, he presented his paper, Logistical Impossibilities in Medieval Megalithic Construction, at a major international conference. He argued that, given the known technology of the era, a structure like the Amiens Cathedral should have taken, at minimum, 900 years to build, not the 50 years the official record claimed. He hypothesized that the builders must have possessed a lost technology for lifting and moving great weights, a technology he could not explain, but whose existence was the only logical conclusion. He called it the rapid construction theory. The reaction was brutal. He was not debated, he was mocked. His colleagues, the guardians of the established narrative, called his work scholarly fantasy and an insult to the faith and fortitude of our ancestors. His funding was pulled. His publisher mysteriously canceled the print run of his upcoming book, which was to detail his findings. Within 3 years, Professor Alastair Finch went from being a respected academic to a cautionary tale, a pariah who had committed the ultimate sin. He had pointed out that the emperor had no clothes. He died in obscurity, his life's work buried in a dusty university archive, a box of notes labeled discredited. They silenced him, just as they silenced Samuel Vance. Just as the foreman silenced Elias Vance and his fellow Masons with threats and poisoned coin. The system was working perfectly. The lie was being protected. But why? Why go to such extraordinary lengths to conceal the truth about how these buildings were constructed? Why invent centuries of fake history? It is a question that leads us from the how to the who, and from a simple construction anomaly to the heart of a global conspiracy. So who were these builders? Who were the silent men Elias Vance called the singers? What was the source of their impossible technology? This is where we must look beyond the confines of accepted history and into the realm of suppressed knowledge. This is where we uncover the story of a lost global civilization. Some call it Tartaria, others Atlantis. The name is irrelevant. What matters is the concept, a highly advanced, worldwide civilization that predates our own known history. A civilization that did not build with brute force, but with an understanding of physics that we are only just beginning to rediscover. They were masters of frequency, vibration, and resonance. They understood that matter itself is nothing more than a specific energy pattern, a frozen song. And if you know the original song, you can change the matter. You can make stone weightless. You can make it flow like water. You can make it re-harden, stronger than before. This is the secret of the tonal architects. The technology Elias Vance witnessed was not new in 1837. It was ancient. It was the last dying ember of a science that had once built the entire world. The cathedrals were not new creations. They were old-world structures, survivors of a great cataclysm, a reset that wiped the memory of the previous age. The work done in the 19th century was not construction. It was reclamation. It was the act of a secret society, the inheritors of this forgotten knowledge, reactivating and repairing these ancient structures. But why repair them as churches? Why hand them over to the religious and political powers of the day? Because the cathedrals were never just places of worship. That was their new purpose, their cover story. Their original function was far more profound. They were machines. They were vast, precisely tuned sonic resonators, designed to harness and amplify the natural resonant frequency of the earth itself. The towering spires were not merely reaching for the heavens. They were acting as antennae. The stained glass windows, with their metallic inlays, were not just telling biblical stories. They were harmonic filters, designed to modulate the frequencies. The massive bells were not for calling the faithful to prayer. They were activators, the striker, for the entire resonant structure. These buildings were power plants. They drew limitless, clean energy directly from the vibrations of the planet. They could alter weather patterns, enhance crop growth, and even promote healing and elevated states of consciousness in the populations that lived within their resonant field. They were the source of the previous civilization's vitality and prosperity. And that is the secret worth killing for. That is the truth that must be suppressed at all costs. The control of energy is the control of civilization. The entire economic and political system of our modern world is built upon a model of scarcity. We are told energy is difficult and expensive to produce. We are made to drill, to mine, to burn, to fight wars over the finite resources needed to power our society. But what if that is the greatest lie of all? What if free, limitless energy is not a futuristic dream, but a forgotten memory? The suppression of the truth about the cathedrals is not about protecting academic dogma. It is about protecting the power structure of the world. It is about ensuring that humanity remains enslaved to a system of scarcity and control, ignorant of its own inheritance. Let us look again at the letter of Elias Vance through this new lens. Suddenly, his words are not merely confusing, they are terrifyingly precise. The sound has gotten into my bones, and it is shaking me apart. He was not speaking metaphorically. Elias Vance was a casualty of an industrial accident. He was an untrained laborer exposed to a powerful, resonant technology without the proper shielding or knowledge. The frequencies that could make stone weightless could, if improperly handled, have devastating effects on the delicate biological resonance of the human body. He was literally being vibrated to death from the inside out. His confession was not born of guilt, but of a terminal diagnosis. Now consider the agents of this suppression. Who is this they that Elias warns of? Who confiscated Samuel Vance's letter? Who destroyed the career of Alastair Finch? The answer is as simple as it is chilling: the institution. It is not one group, but a hydra-headed network of academic bodies, historical societies, museum curators, and governmental agencies, all working, consciously or not, to maintain the integrity of the official narrative. They are the gatekeepers of history. At the top of this pyramid are the secret societies, the brotherhoods that inherited the fragments of the old world knowledge. But their goal was not to restore the old world, but to control the new one. They understood that the technology of the tonal architects was too powerful to be shared. It was a tool for gods, and they intended to be the new gods. So they made a deal with the emerging powers of the 18th and 19th centuries, the royal families, the international bankers, the religious authorities. The deal was this: we will reactivate the old power grid for you. We will repair the ancient machines. But in return, their true function must be concealed forever. We will help you write a new history, a false history, where these structures are mere monuments to faith, built by the sweat and blood of ignorant men. We will give you the buildings, and you will give us the silence. This is the Great Pact, the foundational lie upon which our world is built. And now, we see the modern seeker, the digital dissident, emerging to challenge this pact. Researchers like Dr. Eris Thorne, a man with no university affiliation, no institutional funding, but with access to the one thing the old guard cannot control: the free flow of information. Thorne has spent 2 decades compiling a database of anomalies. He has collected the scattered accounts, the 19th century newspaper clippings, the digitized family diaries, the photographs of impossible stonework. He found the copy of Elias Vance's letter in a forgotten online forum. He unearthed the story of Professor Finch from an out-of-print university newsletter. Thorne is piecing together the mosaic. He demonstrates how the geometric patterns in the cathedral floors, the so-called labyrinths, are actually circuit diagrams, schematics for the flow of telluric energy. He shows how the specific composition of the stained glass, rich in heavy metals like gold and cobalt, creates a specific resonant frequency when exposed to light and sound, functioning like a sophisticated piece of solid-state technology. He maps the locations of the great cathedrals and shows that they do not follow population centers or political boundaries. They follow ley lines. They sit atop nodes of immense geomagnetic energy. They are not placed randomly. They are part of a global grid, a machine the size of a planet. And this pattern is not confined to Europe. It is everywhere. The lie is global because the truth was global. Travel to the high plains of Peru, to the fortress of Sacsayhuaman. The official story, told with a straight face by mainstream archaeology, is that the pre-literate Inca built this complex using stone tools and llama hair ropes. They would have us believe that they quarried, transported, and fitted together 100-ton blocks of andesite with such precision that a single sheet of paper cannot be inserted between them. Look at the stones. There are no chisel marks. The corners are not sharp but slightly rounded, as if the stone was poured into a mold. Some of the largest blocks show evidence of vitrification, a process where the surface of the rock is melted into a glassy substance, something that requires temperatures in excess of 1,100 degrees Celsius. How did the Inca achieve this with campfires? They didn't. This is the work of the tonal architects. The evidence is right there, in the very name of the place. Local legends, when you listen to the real ones, not the sanitized versions for tourists, say that the stones were moved into place by the power of a magic flute, the sound. It is always the sound. Go to Egypt, to the Giza Plateau. We are told the Great Pyramid was a tomb, built by 100,000 slaves over 20 years. Yet not a single mummy has ever been found in a pyramid. Not one. We are shown intricate carvings and hieroglyphs in every actual tomb in the Valley of the Kings. Yet the interior of the Great Pyramid, the supposed crowning achievement of this civilization, is completely bare. No carvings. No inscriptions. No soot from torches. Why? Because it was not a tomb. It was a machine. Independent engineers and physicists who have studied its design have concluded it is a masterpiece of harmonic resonance. The King's Chamber is built from red granite, a stone with a high quartz crystal content. Its dimensions are precisely calibrated to resonate at a specific frequency, the F-sharp chord, which is itself resonant with the natural frequency of the Earth. The so-called air shafts are not for air. They are waveguides, pointed with astronomical precision at specific constellations, not as they were in the time of the pharaohs, but as they were thousands of years earlier. The Great Pyramid of Giza was the master oscillator for the entire planetary grid. It was the heart of the machine, and its construction timeline is just as fraudulent as that of the Cologne Cathedral. Journey to Baalbek in Lebanon. There, in the foundations of a Roman temple, you will find the trilithon, a series of 3 limestone blocks, each weighing an estimated 800 tons. They are part of a larger foundation platform containing stones that are even larger, including the infamous Stone of the Pregnant Woman, which sits in a nearby quarry and weighs over 1,200 tons. The Romans, brilliant engineers though they were, never claimed to have moved these stones. In fact, their own histories refer to the site as a place of ancient and mysterious power. The Roman temple was built on top of a pre-existing platform, a platform so old its origins were a mystery even to them. No modern crane, no machine existing on Earth today, could lift and place a 1,200-ton block with the precision seen at Baalbek. So who could? The answer is always the same. A global civilization with a mastery of sound and vibration. The evidence is overwhelming, a chorus of silent stones, all singing the same song. From the impossible acoustics of the hypogeum in Malta, where a low male voice can create a room-resonating trance state, to the polygonal stonework of Delphi in Greece, to the sun gates of Tiahuanaco in Bolivia, the fingerprint of the tonal architects is undeniable. But in each location, the story is subtly different, twisted to fit a local narrative. In Europe, the structures were claimed by the church. In Egypt, they were assigned to the pharaohs. In South America, to the Inca and Maya. The global truth was fractured into 1,000 local lies. The one interconnected civilization was erased and replaced with a competing patchwork of disconnected, primitive cultures. It was the greatest act of historical vandalism ever committed. And this brings us back to North America, to the heart of the story that Elias Vance unwittingly uncovered. Here, the evidence was not simply rebranded, it was buried. Literally. All across the Ohio and Mississippi River valleys, there once existed thousands of enormous earthen mounds and geometric earthworks, built on a scale that dwarfs modern engineering projects. The official story is that these were built by primitive Native American tribes, the Hopewell or Adena cultures, using wicker baskets and deer scapulae. But when early settlers and archaeologists began to excavate these mounds in the 18th and 19th centuries, they found something that terrified the newly formed establishment of the United States. They found the skeletons of giants. We are not speaking of men who were merely tall. We are speaking of skeletons ranging from 7 to over 9 feet in height. These were not isolated finds. They were found by the dozens, sometimes by the hundreds, buried in elaborate log tombs, often with copper armor, pearl jewelry, and sophisticated scientific instruments. Accounts littered local newspapers and town records of the time. Even Abraham Lincoln mentioned the race of extinct giants in a speech at Niagara Falls in 1848. The Smithsonian Institution, founded in 1846, began a systematic campaign to collect these bones. Under the guise of preservation, agents were dispatched to every major excavation site. They bought the skeletons from farmers and local collectors. They confiscated them from small-town museums. And then, the bones vanished. Thousands of skeletons, the physical remains of a ruling class of giants in ancient America, were collected by the most prestigious scientific body in the country and were never seen again. When pressed, the Smithsonian has claimed for over a century that the finds were all hoaxes, misidentified mammoth bones, or simply lost due to poor record-keeping. They are lying. These giants were the descendants of the tonal architects in America. They were the ones who oversaw the construction and maintenance of the great earthen resonators. And their existence, their very physical reality, was a threat to the entire foundational narrative of the New World. It had to be erased. The mounds were plowed flat. The bones were disappeared. The history was rewritten. But what connects the giants of America to the cathedrals of Europe? The connection is the technology they guarded. And the motive for their destruction is the same as the motive for the cover-up of the cathedral's true function. It is about control. Imagine a world where it becomes common knowledge that an advanced race of beings, giants or otherwise, lived on the land before us. Imagine if we discovered that they possessed a technology that provided free, clean, abundant energy. What would that do to the nascent coal and oil industries of the 19th century? What would that do to the authority of a government claiming dominion over a virgin continent, a new world? It would shatter it. The entire edifice of modern power, built on fossil fuels, centralized banking, and a false narrative of linear progress, would crumble. The truth had to be buried, both literally and figuratively. And so we arrive at the final, most disturbing question. Why? Why was this vast, global cover-up orchestrated? What is the ultimate motive for such a profound and multi-generational deception? One theory is simple control, as we have discussed. The control of energy, the control of history, and thus, the control of humanity's future. By convincing us that our ancestors were primitive and ignorant, they make us docile and grateful for the meager technological scraps they throw from their table. By making us believe in scarcity, they make us perpetual slaves to their economic system. But there is another, deeper theory, a more philosophical, more terrifying one. What if the goal was not just to control humanity, but to change the very nature of humanity itself? Remember the function of the cathedrals. They were not just power plants. They promoted healing. They enhanced consciousness. The resonant frequencies they generated were tuned to the highest potentials of the human mind and body. They created an environment, a planetary field, that encouraged empathy, intuition, and spiritual connection. The old world was not just technologically advanced, it was spiritually advanced. What if the cataclysm that ended that world was deliberate? What if it was an act of war, not by humans, but against them? What if a hostile, non-human intelligence sought to conquer our planet, not by force of arms, but by severing our connection to the earth and to our own higher consciousness? In this scenario, the enemy did not destroy the grid. They seized it. They, or their human proxies, the secret societies, took control of the planetary machine. But they could not simply turn it off. The residual energy was too great. So they did something far more insidious. They detuned it. They introduced a dissonance into the song of the earth. They repurposed the cathedrals, turning them into instruments of control. The bells that once rang with harmonic, healing frequencies were now used to create fear and enforce dogma. The sacred geometry that once elevated the spirit was now used to imprison it within a narrative of sin and salvation. The energy that once flowed freely was now sequestered, available only to the elite. The world we live in today, with its constant background hum of anxiety, conflict, and disease, is not a natural state. It is the product of a deliberately created dissonant frequency. We are living inside a detuned machine. We have been cut off from the source, and we are withering on the vine. This is the ultimate reason for the lie. The cover-up is not just hiding a lost technology. It is hiding our own stolen potential. It is hiding the fact that we are prisoners in a fallen world, and the ruins of our former glory are the very walls of our jail. And now, the final, poignant testimony of Elias Vance takes on its full, tragic weight. His life was not just a story of a man who saw too much. It is a microcosm of humanity's story. He wrote, in a passage his great-great-grandson Samuel had highlighted with a trembling pencil. The foreman tells us we are building a house for God. But the sounds that come from the stones when the singers are near, they are not the sounds of hymns. It is a sound of command, a sound of locking. I feel it in my chest, like a great door is being shut, a door I never knew was open. A great door is being shut. That is the legacy of the 19th century. It was the final act of locking down the planet, the last phase of the cover-up. The great cathedrals, repaired and reactivated, were the anchors of this new, dissonant grid. The mounds of America were flattened, silencing a continental resonator. The bones of the giants were hidden, erasing the memory of a different kind of humanity. And the official history was written, a lullaby of lies to keep us asleep while the bars of our cage were forged. But the truth cannot be buried forever. Stone holds memory. Water holds memory. Our very DNA holds memory. The song of the earth, though faint, can still be heard by those who know how to listen. The work of the modern seekers, the digital archaeologists, is the first note in a new chorus of awakening. The evidence, once scattered, is now converging. The letter of a dying mason in 1837 connects to the vitrified stones of a fortress in Peru. The silenced paper of a 1920s professor illuminates the resonant chambers of a pyramid in Egypt. The newspaper clippings about giants in Ohio explain the suppressed histories of a global civilization. It is all one story, one vast, interconnected truth. The world is not what they say it is. Our history is not what they taught us. And we are not who they tell us we are. We are the descendants of kings, living in the ruins of a golden age, convinced we are the children of slaves. We are sleeping gods, dreaming we are mortals. The final words of Elias Vance's letter were not a plea to his son to forget. They were a warning to the future, a message in a bottle, cast into the sea of time. He wrote, "Burn this letter." But what he meant was, remember. Remember the sound. Remember the lie. Remember that the stones themselves cry out with the truth. They cry out that they were not raised by centuries of toil, but in a flash of forgotten science. They cry out that their purpose is not to inspire awe, but to generate power. They are not churches. They are engines. And the lie we live in is the great, silent wall they built to keep us from ever finding the key and turning them back on.